back to another session of Class 4 History. Today, let us start our session with an experiment. Yes, you heard it correctly. Now, during the experiment, I want you all to follow some steps. Those are, I want you all to observe this particular experiment very carefully. I want you all to ask questions during the experiment. I want you all to make a guess. That means, what do you think will happen? And at the end of the experiment, I want you all to draw a conclusion. That means, what did you learn from the experiment? Students, this experiment is not only entertaining, but will also help you to become a good thinker. Let us start with our experiment.
Let me conduct a small experiment. I want you all to observe this experiment very carefully. Materials: 2 glasses, one big and one small. Water, oil, liquid food color, a dropper, and a straw. I have taken a big glass half filled with water. In the smaller one, I have poured oil. Now, let me add a layer of oil to the water. Students, what are the key ingredients of this experiment? What am I doing? I want you all to think over these questions. Now, let me stir these two mixtures with a straw. Keep it for a while to rest. So students, what happens when you mix water and oil? Yes, we notice that the oil is floating on top of the water. Even if you try to stir up the oil and water, the oil just breaks up into smaller droplets, but it doesn't truly mix with the water. Now let me add few drops of food color into the glass. Let us wait and watch what happens. We noticed how the food coloring droplets hovered in the oil layer. Within a couple of minutes, one drop of coloring suddenly enters into the water layer. Slowly, one by one, each droplet of food coloring burst through the oil layer and mixed into the water, creating a really colorful display. Students, you can try this experiment with more than one food color. Here I am adding one more color. So I have added few drops of yellow food color into the glass. This happened because liquid food coloring is water based, which is why it doesn't mix with the oil even when you stir it. So students, water and oil cannot mix because they are made differently.
So what did we learn from the experiment? We learned that oil and water do not mix. They are made of different matter. Oil is less dense than water. So the oil floats on top of water. Now let me quickly explain you with an example. I have two objects which are more or less of same size but have different weights. Tell me which one is heavier. Yes, the stone is heavier than the ball. The object that weighs more has more matter packed into it. So when I throw this stone in the water, what will happen? The stone will sink. That means the stone is denser than the ball. If I throw the ball will float. So similarly, oil is less dense compared to water. So the oil floats on top of the water. Students, hope you enjoyed this activity. Just as we notice this experiment very carefully. Similarly, the early human beings noticed what was happening in their environment. This is why the hunter-gatherers were able to survive for thousands of years. So today, let us start with a new chapter, that is a scientific attitude. Now, what do you mean by scientific attitude? A scientific attitude means observing the environment very carefully and trying to understand why something happens the way it does. That means they used to observe their environment in a scientific manner. Now, what do you mean by scientific? Scientific means using the methods of science, that is experiment, research, or by observation. They observed that when seeds are planted in the soil, they grow a new plant after a few days. That means they had a scientific attitude towards their environment. So this is how they linked one thing to another in a systematic way. The scientific attitude is a phrase given by us to understand the way they looked at their environment. For example, the hunter-gatherers observed the world around them. Gradually, this helped them to learn things such as how to grow crops and how much water different varieties of plants needed. They studied nature and discovered that several plants could be used as medicines, like
Since ancient times, Indians have used natural products like plants and herbs as medicines. Tulsi gives you strength to fight stress, promotes a longer life, treats cough, good for hair loss, heart diseases, and diabetes. Mint keeps the digestive system running, boosts immunity, expels cough from the body, benefits respiratory health, keeps mosquitoes away. Aloe vera treats constipation, improves digestive health, treats skin problems, helps to heal wounds, promotes oral health. Fenugreek seeds or leaves control cholesterol levels, curbs hair loss, purifies blood and lowers blood pressure, beneficial for joints pain and diabetes. Ginger treats indigestion, eases headaches, controls blood pressure, treats cold, cough, flu, and asthma. Garlic prevents heart attack and stroke, lowers cholesterol and blood pressure, treats stomach ulcers and problems with digestion, treats joints pain. Cinchona is a tree. People use the bark to make medicine. The hunter gatherers in South America noticed that chewing the bark of the cinchona tree could cure malaria. It is also used for blood vessel disorders, cancer, mouth and throat diseases.
these were the few examples of the medicinal plants. Here is one more example of the scientific approach of the early human beings. People noticed regular movements in nature. The sun, the moon and the stars appeared regularly. The seasons were regular as well. we learned about the Gregorian calendar. The new Gregorian calendar was based on the number of days the earth took to orbit around the sun. This showed people must have studied the changes in the season along with the movement of the sun and the moon. However, even before the Gregorian calendar, some people thought that they can make a calendar based on the changes in the nature. They studied the changes in the weather patterns. They roughly divided the year into 4 seasons, that is summer, autumn, winter and spring. Through this study, they found out the best time to sow their seeds and when to harvest their crops. The Egyptians were the first one to invent the first accurate calendar around 4000 BCE. By observing nature and the environment, the early people were able to find solutions to their problems. Now let us study some of the solutions that they have found by observing the environment. The first solution is the stone tools. The early people needed stone tools not only to hunt but also to clean animal skin and to cut the meat. The quality of stone tools started improving with every stage in human development. Archaeologists have discovered tools which are better than the ones which were used earlier. The early human beings started experimenting with new types of stones. Soon they realized a type of stone, a flint stone, could be used for making better and sharper tools. After the discovery of metals, people began to use metals like iron, copper, bronze. This helped them to make tools and weapons which were stronger and better than the stone tools and weapons. The next is the potter's wheel. After the discovery of farming, people began to grow crops. Now, farmers needed vessels or pots to store their food grains. So the first vessels were made of stones. Stone tools were used to shape stone into vessels. It was not an easy task since it required a lot of energy and time. Then some people probably must have noticed clay was soft and easy to work with. When it dried near the fire, it became hard. This must have given them an idea. Instead of using stone, they began to use clay to make vessels. Gradually, they made vessels from clay using their hands. So the first clay vessels were made by hand. Sometimes later, people noticed if the clay is placed on the wheel and the wheel is moved round and round very fast, they could make better pots in very less time. And they could give these pots a better shape. Soon, people began to use potter's wheel to make pots and other vessels. This led to the invention of potter's wheel. Even now, we see potters using potter's wheel to make bowls, jars and pots. Wheel. The early people did not have vehicles to carry heavy and large things. They had to drag them from one place to another. This was hard work. Some people realized the things that roll move faster. They started moving things on the roller made of wood. Gradually, they realized instead of using logs of wood to move things, it's better that they use wheels. So they cut the wood into circular disc that was called wheel. They attached the two wheels with the help of a rod which is called axle. So the first wheel was invented in Mesopotamia, area around modern Iraq, around 5000 years ago. The invention of wheel made a big difference in humans' life. Because of wheel, people can move from one corner of the world to another corner in no time. Science in ancient India. India too had seen similar invention. It is interesting to note that the early human beings were inventing and discovering similar things around the world at the same time, independent of each other. In India, historians have discovered that people had knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, medicines, that is Ayurveda. Aryabhatta was one of the greatest mathematician and astronomer of India. He has contributed immensely in the field of mathematics. Some of his discoveries were algebra, the place value system, and the concept of zero was one of the biggest contribution in the field of mathematics. Apart from his discoveries in the field of mathematics, he immensely contributed towards astronomy. Now what do you mean by astronomy? Astronomy is the study of planets and stars. He stated that planets revolve around the sun. He founded that the earth is round in shape and rotates on its axis. He also explained about the lunar and the solar eclipse. He also stated that the moon is dark. It shines because of the sunlight. India's first satellite and the lunar crater were named after him as Aryabhatta. Medicines. Ayurveda is the Indian system of medicine which is thousands of years old. It uses natural products like herbs and plants as medicine. Ayurvedic medicines are not only popular in India, but it is also becoming very popular across the globe. Sushruta wrote a book in Sanskrit, wherein he has described about various operations, like how to operate an eye or how to repair a damaged nose. So students, in this chapter, we have learned how a scientific way of looking at things around us has helped us to change our lives for better. Having a scientific attitude and being observant has helped human beings to survive and flourish on earth. Thank you.